Good morning, guys. Today's poem was written on the 3rd of October 2016. Um, and again, it doesn't have a name, but I've just given it a quick read through before reading it out to you. And I I suspect that it was quite influenced by listening to Alan Watts a lot of the time. Alan Watts, in case you didn't know, was a British-born American philosopher. He died in the 60s, I believe, and he was essentially renowned for introducing Eastern philosophies to the West. And he's a fascinating character. He could talk for hours on end with no script, and yeah, he was humorous and witty and insightful. Probably one of my favourite human beings I've never met. But anyway, without further ado, we shall begin. So, I'd like to know more about how you see the world. Do you see it as squiggled, or do you see it as curled? Or do you perhaps see it as straight and defined? If you do, then with a majority you're likely aligned. To look deeper into this, we need to go back in time. Let's turn back the clocks and listen to them chime. We need to look at how humanity learned to survive, the techniques and tools we have been using to thrive. It all starts with words, and words can be extremely nimble. Yet what is a word? It's merely a symbol. A thing to symbolize a thing, but that thing it is not. Do you feel warmth when you say the word hot? Would you burn a hole in paper by writing the word fire? By saying elevate, would you be lifted higher? Words are an early means to gain understanding. By overlaying words on the world, we feel above it we're standing. Yet what do we really understand of a thing? By calling it a bird or a feather or a wing? Science is a fantastic way to display this folly. It helps to show us the infinite complexity of something as common as holly. Imagine that today you're driving through a forest. By naming a tree, would you feel accomplished or would you feel modest? Does the word tree even begin to describe the infinite wonders of being alive? The infinite complexity of this thing we call a tree? Do you really think you understand any better than me? Let's take this analysis one step further. I called the tree a thing, but I would liken this to murder. Now, murder may seem overly dramatic, but sometimes extreme examples are a brilliant tactic. A thing is an arbitrary definition on which the majority agree. There is nothing more to it, of that I hope you'll soon see. Let's take an example close to home. Something you can think about when you're alone. For this, I would like to bring attention to a part of your body. That part is your neck, down which goes the hot toddy. Now we all know what a neck is and why it's different from a head, how it comes out of the shoulders and together all three are wed. By wed, I simply mean that they are all together, like shoes and laces and soles and leather. Yet I think that if I were to give you the task of pointing out exactly where one finished and another began, you might begin to ask, exactly where one started and the other one finished. The deeper you look into it, the more clarity seems to be diminished. Let us now look at a different example. Events are often thought of as things, and events are certainly ample. Yet if we look at something as common as birth, where does that really start? It begins where we give it worth. You see that we have already agreed when, like when the egg pops out of a mother hen. Yet whilst this is merely an arbitrary definition, it is not something you will commonly hear as an admission. Could you not equally say that the day you came to be is the day your father's sperm was ejaculated out of he? Or could you not say it was when the sperm and egg combined? Equally, why not the first time your mother and father dined? These are all acceptable beginnings, because there's no real way of saying when you won your winnings. Yet for the purpose of continuity, we have all agreed on these arbitrary definitions, and we advise children to take heed. Let us use the sun as another way of showing how we think naming the world is the same as knowing. How big is the sun, if you were to measure? I think doing so might grant you some pleasure. At present, the agreed way of naming the sun is by the visible fire in the sky. Isn't that fun? Yet could we not just as easily define the sun by the reach of its light all through the sky, or the reach of its heat, because these could all be ways to say how big the sun is either which way. Now don't get me wrong, I'm not trying at all to say there's no use to calling a wall. My point is merely that we give too much meaning to things we've been taught, and off this addiction we need weaning. I think you'd agree that the word spouse doesn't describe everything about your wife, which is sort of my point. Most of us forget that words are not life. The irony is that the less importance I give to the word, the more fun I have using words. Isn't that absurd? Similarly, let us discuss what sort of person you are. Like your personality is as fixed as the model of a car. This is where language comes in extremely handy. We can trace back the roots of words. Isn't that dandy? To save a long explanation related to etymology, I will simplify this for you and owe you an apology. Really, all that the word person means is a mask to be worn to present different themes. By themes, I simply mean aspects of you, different ways to express yourself, ways to be a different who. Who you are in this sense is nothing more than a role. Looking at what sort of a person you are will never make you feel whole. The person you are is a superficial story, a story you tell yourself irrespective of failure or glory. Initially, when you go down this route of inquiry, you are bound to feel confused and somewhat fiery. Yet this discomfort is really a blessing in disguise, for when you come out the other side, you will surely be more wise. Now back to where I was talking about using words as a game. Let me explain how being a person is exactly the same. It really is nothing more than a role to play, a way to express yourself in a different way. Just like the words, when you see them as they are, tools to be used like a boat and a car. Then all of a sudden, the sort of person you choose to become is nothing more than another way to have fun. Okay, so there were a few typos in there, which I didn't notice at the time. It's been a long time since I looked at it, but yeah, thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you again tomorrow.